One of the more challenging tasks that artists have had to do in Illustrator for years is draw art in perspective. Well, with the Perspective Grid tool in Illustrator, you can create artwork normally and then add it to a perspective grid so that Illustrator does a lot of this work for you. Let's take a closer look at this feature. Now, I'm beginning this video with the perspective.ai file already open on my computer. And you can see that here on my artboard, I simply have a basic logo. It's just basic artwork. There's really nothing too fancy about this. But I want to show you how we can add normal artwork to a perspective grid. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to select the Perspective Grid tool. And the minute that I click on this tool, it's going to display the default perspective grid for this document. Now, many of you may have clicked on this button and then try to figure out, well, how do I get rid of this grid once I've displayed it? Well, it's fairly easy. You can hide the grid. You can also, just with this tool selected, come up here and close this widget, and that'll hide the grid as well. So to get it back, we simply need to click on another tool and then click on that tool, and that's going to display the grid. You can also hide the grid by going to the View menu, going down to Perspective Grid, and choosing Hide Grid. And you can see that the keyboard shortcut is Shift-Command-I on Mac or Shift-Control-I on Windows. Now, while I'm in this Perspective Grid submenu, I want to also show you that you can choose a lot of properties in here that'll help you to generate the grid that you're looking for. So for example, I can change my grid to a one-point perspective grid. So if I choose this one, you'll see that I get a one-point perspective. I'm going to go to View, down to Perspective Grid again. We were looking at a two-point perspective. I'm going to go to a three-point perspective, and you can see what this looks like as well. Now, I'm going to go ahead and go back to the two-point perspective grid. There we go. And you can also customize your grid as well. So if you go to View, Perspective Grid, I can go to Define Grid. And in this dialog box, I can control a number of properties, such as the type of grid that I want to create, the units that I want to use. So maybe I'll go ahead and change mine to inches. I can define the scale, and I can choose how often I want a grid line to appear. You can also choose your viewing angle, distance, and horizon height. And then you can also customize the colors that are used to define the different grids, as well as the opacity. So maybe I'll pull mine down to about 40%. And the point of this, going into the Define Perspective Grid dialog, is that once you've set these properties, you can come up here and click on the Save Grid button. So if I click on that button, I can define a brand new grid. So I'm going to call this the LBV Perspective Grid. There we go. We'll go ahead and click OK. And now, whenever I want to create a grid based on this preset, I can just choose it from the list. If I go to OK, go to View, Perspective Grid, you'll notice that now under the two-point perspective submenu, I have a new option there. So we can use that if we wanted to. I'll go ahead and go back to the two-point normal view. I also want to show you that you can adjust the grid manually if you wish. So for example, if I want to adjust the point, if I would move the grid to a different location, I just drag this bottom line right here. You can also adjust the vanishing point here, the horizon line. So I'll just go ahead and adjust that any way that I wish. You can also change the grid right here. If I drag these, I can kind of change how each plane is adjusted. I can click on these and make any change that I want to. So you have a lot of control here. Now I'm going to go to View, Perspective Grid, and go back to the two-point normal view to kind of reset that grid. And now let's take a look at how we get the artwork on the grid. Because right now, even though I'm showing the grid, the artwork is not applied to the grid. So if you click and hold on the Perspective Grid tool, we can go to the Perspective Selection tool. And I'm going to click on my artwork, and you'll notice the minute I do, it kind of snapped to the plane. Normally I like to show people you can just drag it. I'm going to undo that for a second. If you click and drag, the minute that I do that, it's going to snap to the active plane. Well, how do you know what the active plane is? Well, if you look up here, you can see that the plane right here, the first plane is active. You can see it has a color. And you can actually click on another plane to make it active within this cube. But if you want to move artwork to another plane, as you're dragging it, you can do the same thing. If I press the number 2 on my keyboard as I'm dragging, you can see that it actually changed which plane it's assigned to. You can see now it's on this bottom plane here. If I press the number 3, now it's going to snap it over here to the right plane. You can actually make a copy to another plane by holding down the Option key on Mac or the Alt key on Windows and dragging. And as you're dragging, you can go ahead and press the different plane key. So I press the number 1, and then I'll hold down the Option or Alt key again, and when I let go, it has now made a copy onto that other plane. So you can see it's really easy to get to where you want to go. You can put it on the plane that you want it to be on. Now, if you want to have a little bit of fun, what we can do is I'm going to grab the rectangle tool, and I'm going to click and drag to start drawing a rectangle on the appropriate plane. And I can hold down my space bar to reposition this. And this is just going to be kind of a sacrificial shape right now, because what I want to do is if I go to the transform panel, your values are going to be a little bit different, but you can see that my shape is about 430 points by 341 points. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and grab my selection tool, select this, and go ahead and delete it. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and close the widget here. So I'll go back to the perspective grid tool, I'm going to close this, and then what we can do is we can draw a shape that we want to use. So I'm going to go ahead and just draw a regular rectangle. This is not assigned to the grid. And in my swatches panel, I'll go ahead and apply the brick pattern to this. Let's make this shape the size that I want it to. So that was going to be 430 points by 341 points. And I'm going to use my scale tool, and while holding down the Shift and tilde keys, you'll have to look for that on your keyboard, I'm just going to click and drag to make these bricks a little bit smaller. Now, in order for this to work, I'm going to go back to my selection tool, and I have to go to Object, Expand. And I'm going to go ahead and expand the fill colors, because pattern will not scale in perspective on a perspective grid. So now I'm going to show my perspective grid again. Change to the perspective selection tool. I'm just going to go ahead and drag this, and you'll see that it's going to snap to the grid. And so I'm just positioning this where I want it to appear. And if you didn't get the size perfect, it's okay. We can go ahead and adjust it a little bit later. But I'm just going to go ahead and grab this bottom point, and I'm going to stretch it. And we'll do the same up here. What you're seeing here is you're actually seeing the mask that's being applied to this. Because what we did is we converted the pattern to a fill. You'll see that now I have, the shape as well as a mask inside of there. So if you wanted to, you can drag this handle. We can stretch this out a little bit and make some adjustments. That'll work for now. Now, what I'm also going to do, we'll go ahead and click on this again. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold down the Alt or Option key on my keyboard, and I'm going to drag. And as I'm dragging, I'm going to press the number 3 on my keyboard to flip it to the other plane. Now you have to add the Alt or Option key again before you let go so that you make a copy. And now you can see that I have bricks in both perspectives. And you may need to tweak this a little bit to get these brick lines to line up. That's close enough for now. What you can do is if you click on one of these, I'm now going to go to Object, Arrange, Send to Back, and that'll send it behind the pluralist logo. I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing over here. Select this and go to Object, Arrange, Send to Back, and now you can see that we have the artwork on top of the bricks. And if I press Shift-Command-I on my keyboard, that'll hide the grid, and we can kind of see how this artwork is coming into perspective. As you can see, with the perspective grid and perspective selection tools, you can move and draw art in perspective to achieve the end result that you're looking for.